I remember the exact moment Marcus walked into my life. It was a Tuesday morning in September, and I was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the city wake up below. I had just been promoted to Chief Operating Officer of Hartwell and Associates, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the country. At 34, I was the youngest person and the first woman to ever hold that position. I had worked for this, sacrificed for this, given up relationships, friendships, weekends, and holidays. I had earned every inch of that office, every letter of that title. And then he walked in. Marcus Chen. 29 years old, Stanford MBA, 3 years of experience at a competitor firm. His resume was impressive, but it was his presence that struck me first. He had this quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. Dark eyes that seemed to see through corporate pleasantries, a slight smile that suggested he knew something the rest of us hadn't figured out yet. "Miss Rodriguez," he said, extending his hand, "thank you for taking the time to meet with me." His handshake was firm, professional, but there was something in the way he held my gaze, just a second longer than necessary, that made my heart skip. I hired him on the spot. It was a decision I would replay in my mind 1,000 times over the next 2 years, wondering if I had known, even then, that he would become everything. Wondering if some part of me had already started falling before I even knew his middle name. For the first 6 months, we kept it strictly professional. Marcus was brilliant at his job. He had this uncanny ability to see patterns in data that others missed, to ask the questions that cut through noise and got straight to the truth. Clients loved him. The team respected him. And I found myself looking for excuses to work with him. Late nights became our routine. The office would empty out around 7, and we'd still be there at midnight, surrounded by whiteboards covered in strategy maps and half-empty coffee cups. We talked about business, about markets and mergers and competitive advantages. But somewhere between the spreadsheets and strategy sessions, we started talking about other things. He told me about growing up in San Francisco, the son of immigrants who had built a small restaurant from nothing. About the pressure to succeed, to honor their sacrifices. About the loneliness of always being the smartest person in the room, but never feeling quite like you belonged. I told him things I had never told anyone at work. About my childhood in Miami. About being the daughter of a single mother who cleaned offices in the same buildings where I now made decisions worth millions. About the imposter syndrome that still woke me up at 3 in the morning, whispering that I didn't deserve to be here. "You know what I think?" he said one night, leaning back in his chair and studying me with those dark, penetrating eyes. "I think you're so busy proving you belong that you forget you're the one who built the table everyone else is sitting at." Something shifted in that moment. It was past midnight. The city lights sparkled below us like fallen stars. And when he reached across the desk to brush a strand of hair from my face, I didn't pull away. I should have. God, I should have. But I didn't. We told ourselves we would be careful. No one could know. The company had strict policies about relationships between supervisors and subordinates. If anyone found out, one of us would have to transfer to a different department, or leave entirely. And given the power dynamic, it would be him, not me. So we became experts at hiding. At the office, we were consummate professionals. We never touched, barely made eye contact in meetings, kept our interactions brief and business-focused. I was harder on him than anyone else on the team, just to avoid any appearance of favoritism. But after hours, in the privacy of my apartment or his, we were different people. With Marcus, I could let down the armor I wore every day. I didn't have to be the COO, the boss, the woman who had something to prove. I could just be Elena, messy and uncertain and human. He saw all of me, the ambition and the insecurity, the strength and the fear. and he loved me anyway. "You know this is crazy, right?" I whispered one night, lying in his arms as rain drummed against the windows. "The craziest thing I've ever done," he agreed, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "And I wouldn't change a single thing." For 18 months, we lived in that beautiful, terrifying secret. We stole weekends away in small towns where no one knew us. We learned each other's bodies and hearts in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. We built a world that existed only in the spaces between our professional lives. I had never been happier. I had never been more terrified. Because I knew, even then, that something would eventually force us to choose. I just didn't know how brutal that choice would be. The crisis started with a phone call on a Wednesday morning. Our CEO, Richard Hartwell, summoned me to his office. His face was grave, and there were 2 lawyers I didn't recognize sitting in the corner. "We have a problem," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. Inside was evidence of a data breach. Someone had leaked confidential client information to a competitor. The leak had cost us a major contract worth $30 million. Worse, it had destroyed our reputation for discretion, the very foundation our firm was built on. "We've traced the breach to your department," Richard said, his voice cold. "Specifically, to Marcus Chen's computer." My blood turned to ice. "That's impossible," I said immediately. "Marcus would never—" "The digital forensics are clear, Elena." Richard cut me off. "The files were accessed from his workstation. Emails were sent from his account. We have timestamps, IP addresses, everything." "Then someone framed him," I insisted. "Marcus is one of our best people. He has no motive to—" "Actually, he does." One of the lawyers spoke up, opening another folder. "Mr. Chen received a payment of $50,000 from Meridian Consulting 3 weeks ago. The same firm that won the contract we lost." The room spun. $50,000. The exact amount Marcus had mentioned needing to help his parents save their restaurant from foreclosure. "We need to handle this quietly," Richard continued. "No police, no public scandal. But Chen needs to be terminated immediately. Today. And Elena—" He paused, his eyes boring into mine. "Given your position, it needs to be you who does it. We need to show the board that we're taking this seriously at the highest levels." I felt like I was drowning. "Give me 24 hours, I heard myself say. "Let me investigate further. If Marcus did this, I'll handle it. But I need to be sure." Richard studied me for a long moment. "You have until tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. If he's still employed by this company after that, I'll question your judgment and your position here." I spent that entire day and night investigating. I went through every file, every email, every piece of evidence. I called in favors from IT specialists I trusted. I looked for any sign that Marcus had been set up, any crack in the story that would prove his innocence. But the evidence was overwhelming. The files had been accessed from his computer. The emails had been sent from his account. The money had been deposited into his bank account. And when I finally confronted him, in my apartment at 2 a.m, with tears streaming down my face, he didn't deny it. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "Elena, I'm so sorry." "Why?" I whispered. "Why would you do this?" My parents were going to lose everything. The restaurant, their home, everything they'd built over 30 years. I was desperate. And then someone approached me, someone from Meridian, and they offered me a way out. They said it was just market research, that everyone does it, that it wasn't really stealing. "But you knew," I said. "You knew it was wrong." I knew. He looked at me with those dark eyes I had fallen in love with, now filled with shame and regret. I told myself it was just this once, that I'd take the money, save my parents, and never do anything like it again. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about what it would do to the company, to you. You betrayed me, I said, the words like broken glass in my throat. You betrayed everything we built. I know. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Elena, I love you. That was real. Everything between us was real. Was it? I asked. Or was I just another thing you were willing to sacrifice when it was convenient? He flinched like I'd slapped him. We stood there in the wreckage of our secret world, and I realized that love, even real love, wasn't always enough. Sometimes the choices we make destroy the very things we're trying to protect. The next morning, I walked into my office at 8:30. Marcus was already there, waiting. He looked like he hadn't slept. Neither had I. We need to make this official, I said, my voice professionally detached. I had spent the entire night building walls around my heart, brick by brick, until I could barely feel anything at all. I understand, he said quietly. I had prepared the termination papers myself, effective immediately. No severance, no references. A clean break that would protect the company from any legal liability. Marcus Chen, I began, reading from the script HR had provided. Due to violations of company policy regarding confidential information and conflicts of interest, your employment with Hartwell and Associates is hereby terminated. My hand shook as I slid the papers across the desk. He signed without reading them. I need your badge, your laptop, and your access cards, I continued, each word feeling like I was swallowing glass. He placed them on my desk, one by one. Security will escort you out of the building, I said. You have 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings. Elena, he started. Ms. Rodriguez, I corrected, my voice sharp. In this office, it's Ms. Rodriguez. He nodded slowly, understanding. This was how it had to be. Professional, clean, final. But then he looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw everything we had been reflected in his eyes. The late nights and stolen weekends, the laughter and the intimacy, the love that had felt like coming home. For what it's worth, he said softly, you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to deserve you. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw everything off my desk and tell him that I loved him too, that I would find a way to fix this, that we could survive anything together. But I didn't, because I was the COO of Hartwell and Associates. I had a responsibility to this company, to the hundreds of people who depended on it for their livelihoods. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to throw it all away, even for him. So I watched as security arrived, watched as they flanked him on either side, watched as he picked up the small box containing his personal belongings, a photo of his parents, a coffee mug I had given him as a joke, a small plant that had somehow survived on his desk despite his terrible track record with living things. And I watched as he walked out of my office, down the hallway, past the cubicles where our colleagues pretended not to stare, and into the elevator. The doors closed. He was gone. That was the first time I watched him leave. I thought that would be the end of it. I threw myself into work with a ferocity that scared even me. I arrived at the office before dawn and left long after midnight. I rebuilt the department, restored client confidence, and proved to Richard and the board that I could handle a crisis without flinching. Within 6 months, I was promoted to CEO. I had everything I had ever worked for, the title, the power, the respect, and I had never felt more empty. I didn't hear from Marcus after that day. I told myself it was better that way. Clean breaks heal faster. But late at night, alone in my apartment, I would find myself reaching for my phone, typing out messages I would never send. I miss you. I'm sorry. Was I wrong? Then, 8 months after I fired him, I saw him again. I was at a coffee shop near my apartment on a Sunday morning, one of the rare moments I allowed myself to exist outside of work. And there he was, standing in line, looking thinner than I remembered, but somehow more at peace. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. The entire world seemed to hold its breath. Then he walked over. "Elena," he said. "Just my name. Not Ms. Rodriguez, just Elena." "Marcus." My voice was steadier than I expected. "How are you?" "I'm okay," he said. "Actually, I'm better than okay. I've been doing some consulting work, freelance. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. And I've been seeing a therapist, working through everything." "That's good," I said. "I'm glad." "And you?" he asked. "I heard about the promotion. CEO. That's incredible." "Thank you." We stood there, two people who had once known every inch of each other's souls, now strangers, making small talk in a coffee shop. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said suddenly. "I've been carrying it for months, and I need you to know." I waited. "You were right to fire me," he said. "What I did was wrong, unforgivable, and you made the only choice you could make. I was angry for a long time, at you, at myself, at the whole situation. But I understand now. You were protecting something bigger than us. And that took courage." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I loved you," I said quietly. "I want you to know that. It wasn't just about the company or my career. I loved you. And firing you nearly destroyed me." "I know," he said gently. "I loved you too. I still do, if I'm honest, but we both know that's not enough anymore." "No," I agreed. "It's not." He reached out and squeezed my hand, just once, briefly, and then let go. "Take care of yourself, Elena Rodriguez," he said. "You're going to do amazing things." "You too, Marcus Chen." And then he walked away, out of the coffee shop, down the street, around the corner and out of sight. That was the second time I watched him leave. People always ask me what it takes to succeed in business. They want to know about strategy and leadership and decision-making under pressure. But no one asks about the cost. No one asks about the nights you lie awake wondering if you made the right choice, about the relationships you sacrifice on the altar of ambition, about the person you might have been if you had chosen differently. I watched Marcus leave twice. The first time, I watched him leave my office, fired, disgraced, carrying his life in a cardboard box. I made that choice. I signed those papers. And it was the right decision for the company, for my career, for the hundreds of people who depended on Hartwell and Associates. But it cost me the man I loved. The second time, I watched him leave that coffee shop, healed, moving forward, building a new life without me. That wasn't my choice. That was just the natural consequence of the first choice. Because some things, once broken, can't be put back together. I don't regret firing him. He betrayed the company's trust, and there had to be consequences. But I do regret that we were ever put in a position where love and duty were at war. I regret the secrecy that made our relationship impossible to defend. I regret that I couldn't find a way to save both him and my career. Mostly, I regret that I'll never know who we might have become if we had been brave enough to choose each other from the start. I'm the CEO now. I have the corner office, the 7-figure salary, the respect of my peers. I built something I'm proud of. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about Marcus, about the way he looked at me like I was the most fascinating person in the world, about the sound of his laugh, about the life we might have built if the world had been different. They say you can't have it all, that success requires sacrifice, that every choice means closing a door on another possibility. I used to think that was just something people said to make themselves feel better.